We have started our lessons on the Hebrews, and they finally left Egypt, and now they are actually making their journey through the wilderness to get back to the promised land, the land of Canaan, where God is leading them. He was calling them out of Egypt to bring them back to the promised land. So they started their journey, and remember, when after they had crossed the Red Sea, the cloud started to move, which they had to make sure to follow the cloud, and yes, they started to follow the cloud, and they were traveling for 3 days. And so the people, they ended up running out of water. They were tired. They were hot. They were exhausted. So they start to complain. They complain about Moses. They complain how they're going to die in the wilderness. How in Egypt they didn't have to worry about this in Egypt, that in Egypt. So the people start to complain, and instead of asking the Lord for what they needed, which was water, they were thirsty or rest. They start to complain. And so Moses, I told you, thank God that Moses was a great leader. He knew exactly what to do. So Moses goes to the Lord and he prays and he asks God to provide for them. Remember, they had found some water, but it was bitter. It wasn't good, and they couldn't drink it. So Moses prays and asks the Lord, what should they do? And the Lord tells Moses to cut down a tree, a branch, whatever, throw it into the water, and the waters would be healed. And so sure enough, Moses listens to the Lord. He cuts it down, throws it into the water, and the people, when they go to drink, the water was now healed. It was sweet again. So they were happy. They were like, yay, we have good water now. And so they, I'm sorry, after that happened, then the Lord led them to Elim, where they were able to they rested there. They had the springs of water, they had the palm trees. It was very shaded, very relaxing, very cool for the people. And so they stayed there a few weeks. So you see, the Lord was leading them there all along, right? He was going to bring them there. The Lord knew they needed rest. He knew they needed water. He knew all of this. And so they just had to trust what he was doing. And he was leading them to this place where they would be able to rest from all their travels. It was a lot that happened right after they left. They had to leave immediately out of Egypt. Then they had to, they went through the panic where because Pharaoh's army was behind them. And so it was a lot of that. And so the Lord knew what his people needed in that moment. And it was rest. They just needed to relax. So he led them there. So they stayed in Elim a couple of weeks. And then the cloud started to move. So the people knew that it was time for them to go on. Because remember, they are not in the promised land yet. And there was a shorter route they could have taken, but the Lord wanted to kind of lead them on a longer path, a longer route. So they, packed up all their things, and they, got it together so that they could start on their journey, continuing on their journey, So this time they start to travel, and they're leaving Elim. So they are between Mount Sinai and Elim. And so this place, the place that they're traveling in, was really rough, right? It was a hot place. There was no food in that place, no water in that place. But they kind of had water, though. Remember, they had gotten all the water they wanted in Elim. But this time, as they're journeying, there was no food, nothing, not only for them, but for their animals as well. So when they see that there's no food, that they're in a rough place, they immediately jump to complaining. They go straight into complaining, and they're like, oh man, they were like, what are we going to do? Are we going to die in this wilderness? How is this good for us? Why did Moses lead us here? Why did God bring us here? So they just go on and on and on. Have you ever heard someone complain before around you? Have you heard someone just go on and on and on about something? Yeah, it's not good to hear, right? It makes you feel kind of like, So imagine how Moses felt, hearing all the complaints of all of these people at one time, just going on and on about, oh, in Egypt we had this. Oh, Moses, you should have never brought us here. Oh, the Lord brought us here to die. When God is showing the people time and time again how he's with them, he's covering them, he's protecting them, he's going to provide all of their needs. All they have to do is learn how to ask the Lord instead of complaining. I told you, complaining takes your mind. It brings you automatically to a negative place. It doesn't allow you to see the positive or the good that God is doing when you are stuck in complaining. Yes, things will frustrate us at times, but we have to recognize when we're complaining and stop ourselves and say, okay, hold up. It could be a lot worse, right? It could be a lot worse. And then we start to look at what is good in the bad, because there's always good inside of a bad situation. Trust me, that's hard to understand, but there is. So the people, even though they did not have food, God was still with them. They could have asked the Lord what they needed, but instead they chose to complain. And so Moses, when he hears all their complaints, he was really sad about it. He's like, why are you complaining when God is showing us time and time again that he is with us? So Moses, he does what he always does. He goes to the Lord and he prays. And God tells Moses, he says, Moses, I'm still with the people. I have not left my people. I'm going to provide for them. I will do whatever. I will give them what they need. They just have to learn how to ask me. And so the Lord said, Moses, I'm going to provide food for the people. They want meat. They want food. So I'm going to give them that. That's what they're asking for. So the Lord said, I will send meat from heaven in the evening, and in the morning I will rain down bread from heaven for the people. So Moses and Aaron called the people and told them everything that the Lord said. And so they were excited. They're like, oh, wow, God is going to give us food. He's going to give us meat, and he's going to give us bread. They're like, oh, yeah, that's going to be awesome. So sure enough, that evening, they see all the quail, those birds coming. And I told you the birds flew like low enough where the people could just grab, they could just grab a quail, and so they would kill it and cook it, of course. So they were able to have all the meat, and they ate, and they were so satisfied. They were like, yes, we have meat. That's what they wanted, right? They were crying about meat. And so the Lord provided meat for them. So they were excited to have the meat. And sure, and they ate until they were full. God had provided a miracle. They didn't have to hunt, do anything. The Lord brought the quail. He provided the food for them. So should they trust God? Yes. They should just be like, man, God got us. He is going to provide all that we need. But yeah. So anyway, so the next morning when they wake up, they go outside and they see like this like bread on the ground, but it wasn't like the normal bread that we're used to seeing. It was different. So they touched it, they picked it up, and they put it in their mouth, and they were like, man, I've never tasted anything like this. They were like, what is this? And so they called it manna, which means what is it, because they didn't know what it was. And so they were like, what is this? This seems like this would taste delicious. I mean, it does taste delicious, but they didn't know what it was, but it was bread from heaven. That's why. It was the Lord who gave this special bread. We can try to remake the manna, but no, it's from heaven. So that's why it was so delicious. It was nothing like anything they've had before. And so they get the manna. And so the Lord, when he gave the manna to them, he gave them instructions, because God told them that he would give them manna every single morning. He says, every morning you wake up, you will see manna on the ground, except on the Sabbath, as the only day they would not have manna. So the Lord gave them instructions. He says, I'm going to give you the manna every day, guys. He says, so all you have to do is gather what you need for the day. Don't try to get some to store it for the next day or store it for a week. He says, only get what you need. If you need just a basket full, then get that. Don't try to overdo it. The Lord said, I want you to just get what you need for the day, because the next day, what would they have? Manna on the ground again, except the Sabbath. That was the only day that they would not have manna, but the Lord told them that the day before the Sabbath to gather as double, pretty much, so that they would have enough for the next day. That was the only day. All the other days, just get what you need for the day, and they would have more in the morning. And sure enough, the people, they did that. They gathered what they needed for the day, and when they woke up the next morning, there was manna again. And I told you, this actually was like this the whole time that they are going to be in the wilderness. The Lord is going to provide manna for them every single morning. Every day they will have manna waiting for them on the ground. They already know when they wake up, they can go outside, and guess what they'll see? Manna on the ground. So the Lord was providing for his people. So again, God has shown himself faithful to his people. He has shown them that he's a provider, that he will take care of them, that he is there, that he knows all their needs, right? So they shouldn't complain anymore, right? They should, every time they have an issue, what should they do? Ask God to solve this issue, to bring an answer to the problem. That's what they should do. I told you the Lord was walking them through this process, though, because he wanted to teach his people, first off, how to know him, who he is, to trust in who he is. He's not just this far away God that doesn't care, but he does care about them. He does care about their needs and their wants. He sees everything that's going on. He's with them. That's what they needed to learn, who the Lord was. That's what they needed to know. Okay. So after they get the, the meat and the manna, they, continue their journey on. And so the journey still goes on, right? It's not over. They are not in the promised land. They still have to keep on going. So now they, they're going day after day. They still have manna in the morning. So they're traveling, they're going, right? And so sometimes they would travel like days at a time. The Lord would lead them for days at a time. So they're wandering across the wilderness. It was not an easy journey. It wasn't. We're not going to pretend that it was. It was a tough journey. And remember, they had to walk everywhere. We have cars now. We have planes now. We can just easily get from one place to another. But they had to walk during this time. And I told you, this is like a desert they're in. So it's hot. It's dry. So yes. Have you ever just sat down in the sun and you're like, man, it's hot, right? And it's like, I have to go inside. But there was no inside for them to go into. So they just kind of had to walk through this hot desert, through this sun. So yes, it was a little bit much for them. It was a little difficult for them to go through this. But God is still with them, even though it's rough and it's a hard place that they're in. God is still with them. Remember when we talked about Joseph, even though Joseph went through all the bad, the Bible reminded us that the Lord was still with him. And we saw how God worked all that bad around for his good. It was a lot that God was doing in the midst of all that Joseph was going through. And it's the same for the people. Some people don't understand sometimes why God allows bad things to happen. And we're quick to say, oh man, why would the Lord allow this to happen? But God is always doing a good thing and a work, even in the bad, even in things that we're like, I can't stand this. God is still working it out for our good. He's still doing something good in it. He's still God in it, and he's good by himself. So anyway, so they're traveling through the wilderness, going through all of this, and they finally arrived in a place called Rephidim. That was a place that they were in. And so the cloud stopped there. And so when the cloud stops, remember, they stop. So they stop in Rephidim and they are there. And when they look around, they're like, okay, why would the cloud stop here? They were like, there's no wells for us to get water. They were like, we're in a hot desert. There's no shelter. There's nothing. They were like, oh no. Why would the cloud stop here? They're like, Moses, what's going on? Why would the Lord stop us in this place? Why would he not bring us somewhere where there's water, where we could, we'll be okay. It won't be so hot and we're not in the middle of the desert. And so they're like, what are we going to drink? We're almost out of water. What are we going to do, Moses? So guess what they start to do again? Complain. They're like, oh no. They were like, Moses, no, give us water. Why did you bring us here, Moses? We're going to die of thirst. We're going to die here. We're so thirsty. Our mouths are dry. We're dehydrated, Moses. They were like, we need to get out of this place, Moses. Can you please, do something, Moses? We can't go through this. So again, they are complaining. And look, we do things sometimes, right? Whenever we're not supposed to, we do it again, right? Sometimes we mess up. So we're not going to say that they're completely wrong, but we can just look at ourselves in this situation and the things that we keep doing that we shouldn't. So anyway, so yes, Moses, they complain and they're complaining. They're like, oh, Moses, Lord, what are we going to do? And so Moses is looking at them and he's like, I can't do anything. I can't give you water, right? There is no water to give you. Remember in Marah, when there wasn't any water, they found that pool, right? I mean, the spring, the water, and the Lord showed Moses how to heal the waters. But this time there's no water anywhere. There's nothing. No wells, no springs of water, no puddles, nothing. And so Moses is just like, I can't give you guys water, but I know who can. And so they're not trusting in the Lord. Instead, they're complaining. Instead of saying, okay, God, we've seen you provide water the first time. We've seen you provide food for us this next time. We saw you split the sea, Lord. Instead of reminding themselves of how faithful God was before, they're forgetting in this moment. They're forgetting how good the Lord was. And if he did it then, of course, God can do it again, right? God doesn't just do things one time and then it's like he never will do it again. It's not the God he is. He's always performing miracles. He does the same thing sometimes, and sometimes he does a new thing. So Moses, like I always say, thank God Moses knew what to do, right? What do you think Moses did? Complain? No, Moses went and he prayed. Moses went to the Lord. And he's like, Lord, because he was disappointed. He's like, you are back to complaining again. After God is showing us that he's with us time and time again, you are still complaining again. So Moses, he goes to the Lord and he was done. Moses was upset with the people. He was disappointed at this point because it's like it's constant complaining, and Moses had enough. He says, Lord, what shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. They are complaining all day about this, about that. But then the Lord responds, as usual, with mercy and patience. Thank God for patience, right? That he's so patient with us, because, you know, we're not patient with each other like the Lord is patient with us. We get annoyed and aggravated with each other really quick. But the Lord, he's so patient with us. You know, he's slow to anger, the Bible tells us. He waits. He's like, I'm patient with you. So the Lord tells Moses, he says, listen, I will provide for the people. This is what I need you to do, Moses. Take the elders of Israel with you. Lead the people out to Mount Oreb. There was another mount there. So the Lord tells Moses to take the leaders and bring all the people and stand in front of the mountain, Mount Oreb. So the Lord says, I will meet you there at the rock. With your rod, Moses, I want you to strike the rock and water is going to come out. Now, this is obviously going to be a miracle, right? Because I don't know if you ever had a rock in your hand before, but is there water sitting inside of a rock? No. If you crack a rock open, it's just dry rock. That's all it is, just dry rock. But the Lord is telling Moses that he's going to go stand before the rock. And when he stands before the rock, God says, strike the rock with your rod and water is going to come gushing out of the rock. So I'm sure Moses is probably like, wow, that's really amazing. But Moses has seen God do so many miraculous things. He's like, okay, it's like nothing that the Lord is telling Moses is impossible, because Moses has seen God do the impossible time and time again. So that's why Moses is like, all right, Lord. That's so, thank God they have a great leader in Moses, right? Because what if he was a person that did not believe God? You think the people would have gotten this far? Probably not. So it's great that Moses was a great leader who knew the Lord, who knew how to pray, and trusted what the Lord told him. So Moses does exactly what God says. He calls all the people to come stand before the mount. He brings the leaders up front, and the people are watching. So everyone is seeing what's going on right now. They all can see what is about to happen. So Moses stands before the rock, and he does exactly what God says. He takes his rod, he strikes the rock, and immediately water starts to pour, to gush out of the rock, like so much water at one time. And the people are watching and they're like, wow, that's a dry rock. And water came out of the rock. Just now, you think the rod could have cracked that rock in half? No. I'm sure not. That was a miracle. It was a miracle. He did exactly what the Lord said. And so it was so much water pouring out, and Moses says, come and drink. So the people came and they're filling up their jugs. They're drinking the water. They brought all their animals to the water as well. Everyone's drinking and they're getting filled with all of this water. And you think anybody stopped and said, thank you, Lord, for providing for us? No. They did not. But they're gonna get it. They're gonna get it eventually. But again, so now they're happy because they got what they wanted, which was water. So they're not complaining anymore. Now they're like, thank you, Lord. We're so excited. Yes. Yay. Thank you so much for providing this water for us. So the Lord gives them the water. But it's like they're seeing what God is doing, but they're not quite believing what he's doing, because if they believed it, then they wouldn't complain as much as they are. So they're seeing all the miracles. They're just not believing in the God who's performing the miracles. That's their problem. They're not believing in the Lord like they should. And so this is a lesson that they will have to learn. And it's also for us to learn right now, because sometimes we don't trust God like we should. right? We may be quick to complain just like them, or we may give up because we're like, I can't do it anyway. But no, we shouldn't be like that. God is able. He's able to do anything that we want him to do, and he is able to give us the strength and the power to do whatever he has called us to do. We just have to go to him and ask him for it. Of course, our human strength can't do a lot of things, right? We can do some things, but our human strength can't do everything. But we know a God that can. He can do the impossible. Look at all these miracles. Can anybody split a sea? Can y'all do that on your own? No. Can you make water come from a rock? I don't think so, right? I don't think so. Right? Can anybody call quail to come, and can you rain bread from heaven? I don't know. Anybody has that power to do that? No, we can't. We can't, but we have a God that can do those miraculous things. And so anytime we're faced with something that seems extremely impossible, it seems like that, I don't know how that's going to happen. We can trust that God will make it happen. That's who he is, and that's what he does. God is not like us. Never will be, never was. He's God. He sits high and looks low at us here, humans on this earth. So the Lord is able to do whatever we want him to do. And so the people, they just have to, they have to trust that. And so, yes, this is a Bible story, and this happened long ago, but God is still performing miracles today. He can still do a lot of these same things today. And like I said earlier, sometimes he will do the same thing, and sometimes he does a new thing, but it's still a miracle. He's still a miracle working God. He can make the impossible possible. Trust me, I've seen it happen. Have you seen God's miracles before? Were you sick and the Lord healed you? Right? Or do you know anyone that was sick and God healed them? Right? God can do things. Have you ever seen something happen and you're like, whoa, how did that happen? God can do the impossible. If you haven't seen it, ask your parents. They can tell you some things I'm sure they've seen God do that was completely impossible. And you'll see it one of these days. You'll see it if you haven't seen it yet. So God is able. And so the people have to learn that how to trust their God, and that instead of complaining, they can pray about it and ask him for what they need. Amen. And that's our lesson. Okay, so that's our lesson on today on God providing water from a rock. So God is providing for the people yet again. So he gave them water twice, manna, and meat, right? And he's leading them with the cloud. So they'll get it though eventually, how to trust their God. So next week, after we come back from Thanksgiving, we'll pick up and continue their journey. And then when we come back, we'll learn about how God will actually appear to the people. He will actually come and speak to them himself, right? And so that's an amazing thing. God has never done that for no other people, where he appeared to them as a whole. So they will actually see God. Well, not see him, but they'll hear his voice. Okay, all right, so that's our Bible lesson on today. That is it for us. Okay, all right, so